Me too, kiddo. But hey, I'm here now. Wherever the hell here is.
Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, and with Final Shape releasing later this year, I thought it'd be a really cool idea to have a top 10 list of my favourite seasons, updates and DLCs from Destiny 1 to Destiny 2. So with further ado, let's jump into it. With 10th place going to Dark Below, the first DLC of Destiny 1. For many ways, this set trends that will come later on with Destiny 1 into Destiny 2 with DLCs. It definitely was very much what they kind of got inspiration for with Curse of Osiris and the Warman DLC in Destiny 2. Wasn't the greatest idea just to do that, but there you go. Though, the reason why it's number 10 for me, it had a cool raid, which was the Crow's End, which, well, in fact, was the first raid I ever completed, so there's that. And a pretty cool story. Though the story was only 3 missions long, had a pretty cool strike along with it, but it's really just a number 10 spot because it's cool and it didn't really do anything wrong. It didn't do anything particularly outlandish or anything that's memorable, but it didn't do anything wrong either, and it secured a place in my 10th spot. Now, on to, with my number 8th spot is Season of Opulence from Destiny 2. Season of Opulence was the last in the first 3 seasons we got after Forsaken, and my personal opinion, it's one of the better ones we got since and after, personally. Where it came with a raid, which was kind of not common for seasons back then. Sure, the 2 seasons before that, the season of the Forge had also had a raid, but then since then, up until roughly Witch Queen, they didn't really have the DLC raid, then a dungeon raid, dungeon kind of thing. So this was new, and it was technically the last of a trio of a quad of raids in the Leviathan, where you kind of get an update with what's happening with Callus and his loyalists, and I think it's a pretty solid season. The raid is my favourite out of all the Leviathan raids, personally. That's just a personal opinion, because sure, the Leviathan, the main Leviathan raid was pretty cool, but if best, it's par with this raid. It's also a raid layer, because that's the thing they used to do. I get it. Again, similar to why Dark Below was in 10th place, is purely because it did nothing wrong. It was really fun. It was also a really fun chest system where if you farm a lot of stuff, there was this barge, you can get open chests and get some loot. And it was one of my most favourite weapons come from that season as well. So again, it only just slightly outranks the Dark Below because it has a slightly more coherent story, despite not actually having a story campaign like a DLC would. But it just inches over, despite being in the very same position as Dark Below, where it's cool but didn't really do anything big, but didn't do anything wrong at the same time. Now, on to, with number 8, we have Season of the Dawn, the second season after Shadowkeep. This season was slightly more better in my opinion than the Season of Opulence because, one, it had time travel and it was explaining how Saint got back and it got loads of people's hopes up with Cade coming back. Never happened, unfortunately. But it also got a pretty cool storyline with how you get Saint back, and also you get to see your future. It's not a good one. But with that aside, I personally just like this season more than Season of Opulence. Like I said, it doesn't do anything wrong. A lot of these first spots, they purely here because I liked them and they did nothing wrong. So Season of the Dawn is in that same boat. It kind of would have been higher if it wasn't set on Mercury, which Mercury kind of got pooped on by Curse of Osiris, in my opinion. So it already had a bad start there, but the story holds up to this day, and some story threads that started in that season, which was say 14, are still going. So think of that as you will. Now on to, with number 7 being the Taken Spring update, or the April update, which, as the name suggests, means it is an update for the Destiny 1 expansion, the Taken King. What makes this so special for me, though, it's like a mini season. If you have the Taken King update, the Taken King expansion, it's free, basically. It was a free update for the Taken King expansion. So you got a new strike, a mini free mission story, similar to the arc below. But you also got a story like how Malok was actually apparently Seraphim's daughter, which I didn't know that until recently, which is really cool. But yeah, the main carry of this is the update I had for Prison of Elders. I won't get into why the main carrier is the Prison of Elders. I will explain later on and you'll see why. But the Prison of Elders update added new armors, new weapons that were Taken themed, so the armor was Taken themed, and had a revamp for the Prison of Elders that had up until that point already received any updates. So it was pretty cool. Nothing too wrong with it, but the main factor for me is it updated the Prison of Elders and that it was free if you had Taken King. So that's why it's on second place. Now on to, with number 6, the vanilla Destiny 2 release. This came with a story with the Red War campaign that is no longer unfortunately part of Destiny 2, and I'm strongly advocate for it to come back, whether in a legacy form or a new like mixed campaign, whatever. I personally prefer that campaign over the new like campaign which we have right now. So I'm not particularly happy about that part. But Gol himself, the villain for the story, is, besides from Callus and Keitel, probably in my top 3 of most favourite Cabal figures in the Destiny 2 games. The Destiny 2 games. The Destiny games, Destiny 1 and Destiny 2. He just comes across as a badass. He has a cool appearance, and literally his first appearance you see him in the story, he's literally just beating you and then knocks you off his ship because you were basically trying to break his ship. It was really cool. But also, in this story, you also got through the starting planets like you did in Destiny 1. Also recruiting the Vanguard, which had split after that. And the story was... it was alright. The story was nothing to be sung or whatever. Like I said, the main thing that carried the story, in my opinion, was probably the whole fact that you lost your light, that you got back in the mission. Literally one mission after you lost it. And Keitel. No, not Keitel. God, it's been so long since he's been around. Callus. I do genuinely question my intelligence sometimes. But with Gol definitely carried the story, just completely. And the fact that he actually was kind of able to obtain the light was another cool thing. But also, the device he used to capture the Traveler is still making waves up until this day, far as I'm aware of, with the Dark Cabal and that suppressing your light, which is pretty cool to have a storyline all the way back from then. And obviously has Cayde in it, which had Cayde in its updated form since Taken King, where before that he was not really that interesting. He was interesting, but not that interesting. But this, we had a full campaign since the Taken King, where we had him in it, and he was just as hilarious as he was in Taken King. Unfortunately, we didn't get really a big campaign after with him in it, because the next big campaign was Forsaken, what he was in. So... rest in peace. Anyway, onto the raid, the Leviathan raid. As I mentioned before, it was alright, did nothing wrong. I'd much prefer Paz's appearance at a later point in the story, but I'll get into that later. And also, while I'm quickly brushing over it, because I'll spoil this right now, Curse of Osiris and Warmind are not on this list. So I'll quickly just cover them now, the raid layers. Raid layers were an interesting idea, but they didn't really work out. They kind of just came across as over 6-player dungeons, in my opinion, that had slightly more awkward mechanics than dungeons. So that didn't really work out. And also the reason why this is 6th place is because once you complete the story, once you complete the raid, you had a handful of strikes, handful of adventures, and Crucible. That was it. The endgame became quite bland, quite fast. And when Curse of Osiris and Warmind came out, they didn't exactly help. So that's why this is in the 6th place spot, because it was good, but it was like better than the rest of what I said before. But it definitely had some downsides to it that can't really keep it anywhere lower than 5th place. So 6th place it is. Now on to with 5th place. 5th place being Destiny 1 vanilla launch. Now, some people might do this the other way around, but I personally put Destiny 1 just above Destiny 2. For the main reason being was the state of when I was when I played it. I have more memories, fond memories of playing Destiny 1 during its launch before any DLCs released than I did with Destiny 2. Whether that was because the community was just better then, that's subjective. But I personally enjoyed the story, despite lacking a villain of any real sorts, apart from the darkness, which it just sounds like they don't know who the villain was. So at times it was the Hive, and then it was the Vex, and then the Cabal kind of kicked in a little bit towards the end. I don't know. Also, at that time, the Fallen were apparently forces of the darkness, and then there were actually forces of the darkness. I don't get it. But the point being is, I put this here purely with my personal experience over the second one, where I would probably say, logically and like having a laid back view at it, yes, probably the second one is probably better, but I prefer the first one. I just believe that Raid's better, the Crucible better. That's again subjective, and I don't really play Crucible anyway, so what's my valid point on that? And I just like the worlds a little bit more. They just feel a little bit more rich, more condensed. My favorite planet was definitely Venus, which I feel like it'd be cool to go back there, even if it's like a seasonal thing. Yes, that's why I put Destiny 1 Vanilla in 5th place. Now, on to number 4, which is House of Wolves. House of Wolves is the second DLC for Destiny 1, and it introduced many great things that we would see later on in the Destiny series. But the real reason why it's this high on the list, and it's for a very much personal reason, is Prison of Elders. I've said previously in one of the previous ones for the April update that that Prison of Elders pretty much carried that one. Yeah, it's the same. This one pretty much carried this one as well. The story with Skolos is very good. It's the first time we actually get a proper villain in the story. Because before, in the main story, it was this, and in Beyond Light Dark Below, it's Crota in crystal form. And you also fight him in the main raid for that DLC, but it's not the same to have a villain that you're pretty much just chasing after during the whole DLC, which is just great. It gives it a different theme, gives it elevation, and his whole goal to unite all the Fallen, which could be really bad for humanity, is also pretty good. It's also pretty self-contained, which is nothing wrong with that. But like I said, the Prison of Elders, I like it. And there's no other way I can really describe it. It's basically a PvE mode where you just go into different rooms and you do different activities, whether it's like defusing bombs, killing enemies. It can vary. And then at the very end, you go into one of the rooms you went on previously, which have one enemy type boss in it. So there's one Fallen boss, one Cabal boss, one Hive boss, and one Vex boss. And if you do the very hard version, you also get to fight Skolos again, because in the end of the story, you capture him. And unlike the previous 2 raids beforehand, you can get one of 3 exotics from that. 2 of them are in Destiny 2, which is the Queenbreaker Bow and the Lord of Wolves. And then there's Dreg's Promise, which never got released in Destiny 2. And that sucks for me, because that's the one I got. That's the one I did when I completed it and I got any of the exotics. It was the Dreg's Promise. And that, by default, made it my favourite. So the fact that it's never been re-released in Destiny 2, despite the other 2 being so, sucks. I really do want it back. But there are other sidearms now that kind of do the same job, so if they would add it, it would have to be different in some way, but it would be cool. Also, a little fun side fact as well is Trials of Osiris is also added just during this DLC. So whether you like that or not, that was thanks to this DLC. So there you go. Now moving on to number 3, with the third one being the Season of the Haunted, which there's no reason why, I just think it slaps. It's just really, really good for a seasonal story. In fact, the best in my opinion. You get a new activity, you get a new social, not social zone, but you get a new like zone where you can look around. You can not have to be on a mission to be there. Sure, the main reason why you go there is to do the events. That's part of the season. But you can also look around and go around the Leviathan, which is previously a raid before. You can see how much it's changed since that was last in the game, and now. Then, which it changed a lot. It was pristine and clean, and now it's. I think they left the plants growing a little bit. That's a fun little fact. When the Leviathan and all Destiny 1's Destiny 2 stuff, the original stuff, before they altered it, that has been out the game now longer than that stuff was in the game. Yeah, and I still believe that the campaign for Destiny 2 thing should be there, but that's not part of this one. But it was cool. Like I said, the story is great. It's probably the best, in my opinion. You can argue if there's one better, but personally, I think it just works with Alduin, Zavala, and Keitel having their own personal problems that come back with a certain entity, whether it's the Crow with Alduin, Zavala with his wife, and Keitel with Gol. And if the season was still a part of the game, I would recommend you play it. It's not. If you want to watch it, I'd recommend that as well. But the final cutscene was great. The story remained consistently good. I was able to get through it without feeling any kind of burnout. The scythes were pretty cool, and the dungeon was also pretty cool too. So yeah, again, it did everything amazingly, and did very little wrong in my opinion. So with that, on to number 2, which is the Taken King, the third DLC for Destiny 1, and up until the number 1 place, is probably the best DLC, which to some people won't surprise, and to others might, because there might be some niche in some other ones. But this thing just does so many things right. It does world building. It adds, if you want to count the Taken a new race, it adds a new race. Or if you want to call them variation then. It connects story plots from the previous 2 and DLCs and the story from the original game of how the Shrine to Oryx, there's a secondary there's an optional mission in the main camp. There's an optional mission during Vanilla Destiny 1 where you go to the Shrine of Oryx, where your ghost references this king or god. The Taken King is also a hive god, so there's that reference there. And it also connects to Dark Below, because the whole reason Oryx is here is you killed a son, Crota, in the Dark Below. So that's kind of on us. We did kind of kill this guy's son. Now we saw him and in this angry rampage in our solar system, so that was pretty cool. The raid was probably my favorite raid that's ever been out. Though I definitely had my worst moments in raiding ever in there. If you played either the Destiny 1 version or the Destiny 2 version, you'll know which encounters I'm talking about. There was also the Court of Oryx, which was this public event thing where you could choose the public event and how hard it would be for different rewards, which was very, very cool. And the music was very great. Especially, obviously, Oryx's music, where it's the raid version or the story version. Because that's right, You fight him in the end of the story, and you fight him in his own raid, because he has to do something better than Crota. So yeah, I personally just love it, and whether you like it or not, you can't argue that it definitely did some new changes for Destiny 1 that put him ultimately on a better path for however long you want to say it went on for. And I would put this in first place if I hadn't have to begrudgingly say that what the first place is just better. So with further ado, let's move onto honorable mentions, which I have an book here. Yes, it does say I'm sorry I'm late because I was gaming. I just hit the mic. Sorry. But there's an honorable mentions list here, and I shall read them out because I can't remember. So, the list is not limited to these, but these are the ones I'm going to read out. Which is Season of the Forge, which was the first season in Destiny. And it set up this whole seasonal thing, which is very worse, kept the story going for a while. Now I am kind of glad they are changing the story up after Final Shape, because season's getting quite boring, but we'll have to see how they do that. Then Forsaken, obviously, very big expansion, very good story, but and this is a personal reason why it's not on the list, I am deeply saddened by this. But hey, at least he might come back permanently in the next DLC. Maybe. Then there is Beyond Light. Similar to the first couple of placements in this list, is it did everything, it was great, it was fine, and did nothing really wrong, but it did a couple of things wrong, Crucible wise, or just, the story being kind of a bit cringy here and there. But besides than that, it was fine, but it just didn't really make the list. If it was a top 11 list, then it would have been there. Same with Rise of Iron. It would have been, if it was a top 11 list, it would have been 11th place. Did nothing wrong. I actually really liked the story, loved the Iron Lord setting, loved the Fallen aesthetic. But it would have been 11th place. I'm not going to say anything about that. Anyway, and the last in this list is Season of the Spicer, where we got introduced to Mithrax. Mithrax being this really cool Fallen guy who's our friend. And if you want to look more into that, you can Google it. But he looks really cool for a Fallen, so you could say whatever you want. And also, while I'm here, I want to have one dishonorable mention, and that would be Shadowkeep. Out of everything Destiny 1 and Destiny 2 produced, I really hate Shadowkeep. Literally, a part of the story is just bounties. And bounties are okay, they're optional though. I don't want to go through the story by doing bounties. And also mention the story was meh, apart from the pyramid part. And all the enemies you fight are basically just reskins of people you've already fought with no soul. Makes sense for the lower enemies like thralls, whatever. But for the bosses that might be these big imposing people from your past that are meant to haunt you, they don't. They're just soulless copies who just may as well be just given different names and just be like this person, but he looks really close to this guy. It just doesn't work. And don't even get me started on the trend it started with the fucking strikes being the missions in the story then become strikes. It's done it in every single DLC since. Hey, future me here, it appears in my massive rant I missed out a pretty big fact that Shadowkeep did not start the trend where they reused missions and made them strikes. Forsaken did that with the hollowed layer. So, my bad. But besides from that, yeah, fuck Shadowkeep. It did it with fucking Beyond Light. It did it with Witch Queen, and it's done it with what's called Lightfall. I'm stuttering because of how much I don't like it. But there is a couple of examples in that I said there that I can kind of look the other way to, and I'll get to that later. But it set up trends that I don't like. It had basically a huge portion of it just basically bounties. And there was basically no haunting in it. The moon was great, but again, it's a reused asset with a massive fucking red tower, which is whatever. And yeah, but the pyramid ship was the cherry on this very suspiciously brown cake, and it's not chocolate. Anyway, with that rant out of the way, let's move on to number 1, which this probably won't surprise anyone. If it was called having taken King in second place did surprise someone, it probably won't surprise you that Witch Queen was number 1. In my opinion, is called I can't argue with the fact that even though it's like the Clarkson style where it's like I like this, this is good, but I like this. I'd like Witch Queen is good, and it's really good, and it's probably and it is better, but I like Taken King. But I had to be fair and put Witch Queen in the number 1. It just does so many things right. The world is amazing, the raid's amazing, though I never completed it. The activities are great, the story is great, the villain, who is Seraphine, is great. She's had way more longer to also have an actual story behind her, because between when Oryx was first kind of teased, which was back in Destiny 1's vanilla campaign, and Taken King was only probably about 1 year, while when Seraphine was teased back in the vanilla of Destiny 2's campaign to Witch Queen, that's roughly 3 to 4 years, if not more, time where she's been villains in seasons. She was behind what happened in Shadowkeep. Still hate Shadowkeep, let's not move on from that. But all that is great. And come to the strikes, even though the strikes are missions that have become strikes, the Light Blade strike technically was already a strike, just you do it in the story. And the mission, the other strike, it was a mission in an exotic quest thing, so I don't really care. It's not really part of the story. And they changed most of the dialogue in that one anyway, so it's fine. It's not great, but it's fine. There's just so much good things in that DLC that I just can't ignore. They just is better than Taken King, though how much it hurts. Because in my heart, there'll always be Oryx, but unfortunately, Seraphine is the better of the villains when it comes to those two. Still, the jury's still out there on the third sister being Zero Wrath, but we'll still have to wait for that one. If it's not going to be talked about in final shape, then God knows when. Anyway, if you agreed with these, let me know, but I'm more interested if you think this list should be in a different order, or if you think there's some things that in this that shouldn't be in this list, or if you have things that aren't in this list that should be in this list, please let me know in the comments below. I would like to know. Anyway, if you like this video, bye for now. Bye.